Welcome to Everyday Counseling, a podcast about understanding emotional patterns as they show up in everyday life. In the last episode, we explored how conflict begins, not with shouting, but with interpretation. A comment lands, meaning is assigned, emotion shifts. Today, we're looking at why, once that shift happens, conflict often escalates faster than people expect. Once interpretation changes, the body follows. Conflict is not just psychological, it's also biological. When we perceive threat, and that threat can be social, non-physical, the nervous system activates. Heart rate increases, attention narrows, tone tightens. Even subtle perceived criticism can trigger this cascade. One important factor here is temperament. In personality psychology, there's a trait called neuroticism. It doesn't mean someone is neurotic in the everyday sense. It refers to how sensitive someone is to emotional threat. People higher in neuroticism tend to notice potential rejection quickly, react strongly to ambiguity, experience emotions more intensely, and recover more slowly from stress. In a conflict setting, that sensitivity matters. If someone already has a nervous system that detects threat quickly, a small shift in tone may feel significant. The interpretation forms faster. Their reaction intensifies more quickly. Now, let's add biology. Serotonin, often described as a mood stabilizing neurotransmitter, it plays a role in emotional regulation and impulse control. Lower serotonin has been linked to increased irritability and aggression in research. This doesn't mean someone is chemically wrong, it means emotional thresholds differ. When serotonin balance is low or stress is high, tolerance for ambiguity decreases. The space between feeling and reacting shortens. Cortisol and adrenaline also raise during perceived social threat. These chemicals prepare the body for action. They're useful in danger. In conversation, they can be disruptive. Under stress, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for reasoning and perspective, becomes less dominant. The amygdala, little dangly bit at the back of your brain, associated with threat detection, becomes more active. In simple terms, when emotions rise, thinking narrows. That narrowing explains why conflict escalates. Consider a disagreement between partners. One person says, "Oh, you never listen." The other hears not frustration, but accusation. Their nervous system activates. They respond with defense. "That's not true." Now both bodies are in heightened states. At work, a manager offers brief feedback and the employee interprets it as criticism. Stress rises, the reply becomes clipped. The manager senses defensiveness and responds more formally. Escalation is not about intention, it's about physiology meeting interpretation. Neuroticism amplifies this process. If someone is dispositionally more sensitive to emotional threat, their internal alarm activates sooner. Once activated, stress hormones reinforce the perception that something is wrong. Now, ambiguity feels dangerous rather than unclear. Escalation also happens because people react to reactions. You tighten your tone. You perceive irritation. I defend myself. You perceive defensiveness. The loop accelerates. Each person's biology contributes. Sleep deprivation increases emotional reactivity. Chronic stress lowers frustration tolerance. Hormonal fluctuations affect mood stability. Even hunger plays a role. You've heard of that phrase, feeling hangry, so hungry that you're on the edge of being angry. Yeah. This is why the same conversation can unfold very differently on different days. What feels like a character flaw is often state dependent. When escalation is understood biologically, something shifts. Instead of seeing conflict as proof that someone is unreasonable, it becomes evidence that two nervous systems are reacting simultaneously. This doesn't excuse harmful behavior, it explains speed. The faster the system activates, the faster escalation occurs. Understanding this gives us the next crucial question. If conflict escalates because interpretation meets biology, what interrupts that pattern? What prevents activation from spiraling into damage? Well, in the next episode, we'll explore what happens at the peak of escalation and why some conflicts rupture connection while others begin repair in the same moment.